Hi guys, welcome back to My Steps to Sobriety, my show on YouTube and as a podcast with me, your host, Stefan Neff. And today is a fantastic interview because I have got a woman with me who luckily has hit rock bottom, because had she not been in that place, she probably would have not found the power within herself to change her own life and now show others to do the same for their life. In fact, just like me, she has learned to love her life and live her life to the fullest. And that is the most beautiful, beautiful place to be. So therefore, two peas in a pot here as far as our missions are concerned. So welcome on board to my show, Susie Pettit. It's lovely to have you on my show.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here. I am thrilled.
Indeed. Susie, it is, when I read your website, it is that immediately struck me. Luckily, I have hit rock bottom. And it sounds so bizarre for normal people. We are not normal because we have gone through trauma. We have gone through darkness. We have gone through times that you sometimes don't even wish your enemy. Yet we come out the new and improved version. It is nearly as if you have to feel the heat and the pressure before you can become the diamond that shines and maybe brings the light into the darkness of others. And I think,
absolutely agree.
And you have been there. But I mean, that is not how you wanted to be when you were a little girl. What did you want to be? Who did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, so when I was a little girl, I was raised in a household. I was the oldest of three daughters, and I was raised in a household where I remember being told for as long as I can remember that I should have been a boy and that boys are better. And so 100%. And so I was raised in this household that I wasn't good enough even to begin with. And so I constantly was striving from a very young age to be something different than I was. So to ask me what I wanted to be as a little girl, I very much disconnected very quickly from what Susie wanted, because I was taught that what Susie wanted was wrong. And I needed to look externally because Susie's wrong in herself. So I very much was raised to sort of play these roles and be the people pleaser and try to do what my dad wanted me to do. And it was a very interesting household where I never felt quite good enough and that women were less than men.
May I ask, what did your dad do? What was his profession?
Oh, he was, I have had therapy, and he very much was an insecure man. He almost failed out of college. He got a job through his dad, and he never, succeeded as much as his, he very much was insecure in himself. And thus, that showed up with my mother was an incredibly intelligent person, and I never remember him commenting on anything about her other than her weight and in a negative manner. He was very controlling of food and what we did, and that we need to be careful of how we look. So my dad definitely was a hurt man, and men hurt people. So I can see why my dad was the way he was. I have learned not to take it personally. My thought now is that I had the exact father and I had the exact mother to become the woman that I am today. That has been some hard cognitive work to get to, because I left my, home life to go to a college. And I was just this, from the outside, I looked like this perfect achiever, the little American that is just all A's and got into the good school. And then I, as one does, fell right into a relationship with another, sort of very codependent, controlling male, where I was not good enough. And yet, looking back at that was my first husband. We were married for 19 years, had 3 beautiful sons. But looking back at that, I understand, he married a version of me that was completely false, that I was so into this people-pleasing role and trying to be what other people wanted me to be. And he married that. And yet, it wasn't until sort of midlife when I was like, wait a minute, that's not me. So I'm very quick to not point fingers. As we do, we have trauma in our childhood. And then if we don't resolve it, we move into relationships that will poke at us until we do. So that's a long answer to your question of what I wanted to be when I was a little girl. I can look back at when I was a little girl and see how I got to where I am now, a life coach for women. One of my friends reminded me it was just my 50th birthday. And she said, do you remember in middle school, you used to tell us to write our problems on pieces of paper and shove them in your locker, and you would get back to us and give us advice? And I was like, no. So at a very young age, that was my dream. Like, let me tell you what to do, people.
Oh.
But I didn't free myself up enough to do that I needed to be someone different. So.
Oh, amazing. Yeah. Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But you came straight to the point, straight where the money is, because often enough, we don't realize how early and how profoundly our core beliefs can get hammered and changed with seemingly innocent childhood trauma. So what, grow up and, it's what do you think, children, that kind of behavior from someone else, the lack of support, the lack of nurturing, even one certain way of looking at you can be a huge trauma that will forever change you in your life. And it sounds so cliche, yet it is so brutally important. And I love it that you came straight to that, and that you.
Well, I need to interrupt and just say that I also think that I work with a lot of parents, and I have yet to meet a parent that intentionally sets out to screw up their kid. That it's like, I have yet to meet that parent that's like, I'm going to screw this kid up. Like my father, in his lack of understanding and knowledge, was coming from a place of love. Like I legit think that he thought my life would have been easier if I was a boy. And so then telling me that somehow, maybe that's a little bit unskillful, but then my whole life priming me to, be skinnier and be like, just fit into this mold and be more man-like and be more masculine. That was coming from his place of love. Absolutely. It wasn't coming from like, let me screw Susie up. And yet that's what happens in childhood, that we have these experiences that then in adulthood we can learn to work through so that we can live a life that we love.
Intriguing.
Not carry that baggage through. Like I'm the adult now. When I was the child, I was injured. Now I have the control to sort of stand up and parent myself.
Nice try. But nice try, that's all I can say, because you were an adult at 21, 25, wherever you set the boundary of adolescence to a childhood. Yet, as young adults, quotation mark, we are just as damaged. If we're actually worse, because we need to make more negative experiences. We need to be pushed so far outside of our comfort zone that you break and that you really end up rock bottom before you actually bloody realize that maybe alone you can get your shit together. So, I mean, you came from a childhood that was intended to be good, as you said, but left scars. You went into a relationship that probably added more scars. And you could argue self-inflicted scars, because there you were, you're pretending, not that you intended to be a spy and live as an altered persona. No, that is not an actual will. This is so deep down that you don't even bloody know. So there you were. What changed? I mean, you were living this lie, so to speak, as we all do in our younger lives. What changed? What was the moment when you realized?
I had a moment. I just want to back up, because I do think while I, crossed that line of childhood to adult, whenever that is, 18 or 21, I was not an emotional adult. Correct. I was still an emotional child.
Beautifully
so that's
said.
what I really didn't become an emotional adult until 35, which was, I started to have little pings and was getting very uncomfortable with the difference in how my first husband and I parented our children, but I still was very much an adult emotional childhood, in that I was blaming him and blaming my parents. I was not taking responsibility for my life. But so I was getting these pings. But to answer your question, the downtime was I had a friend that we were living sort of parallel lives, that we would get together and complain about our husbands and complain about, really be in that victim mode and look at all this. And then she was diagnosed with cancer. And I ended up being one of her primary caregivers. And unfortunately, she did pass after 3 years, but it was a very much wake up call for me in terms of like, oh my gosh, what life am I living? Like, hold on. I may not be alive till 100. I might be alive for another year. And is this the life I want to be living? And in doing that, I call her my inner warrior, like WARRIOR. I have a tattoo. Actually, I got tattooed on my Independence Day when I asked for divorce. But my inner warrior started to speak up. And I just feel like it was like a little tap, tap, tap from the universe. Like, hey, I'm in here. You know, that little girl that was told she's not good enough, she's not right. Like, she has some desires and some wants, and this isn't okay. Like, let's start to look at what she might want. And from there, I had a lot of big moments, including I had 32 seizures in a weekend because I was so stressed, and, our mind and body are connected. And my biological parents, probably not as a big surprise, but they chose to side with my ex and fund him and shredded some documents. This is back in 2014, so that not everything was online when we were married in 1996. So they had the document that showed my premarital earnings. They shredded that. That was almost $500,000 of my premarital gone.
Ooh.
Leaving me zero, with the potential of that if I left with my kids, they would file for, there was kidnapping. Okay. And if I left without my kids, they would file abandonment, and I would give up rights to childcare. So I needed to stay in the unfinished basement for a year based on the state of Virginia where I was living. And that's around when I had the seizures. And yet I couldn't be happier today and more grateful for that experience, that wake up call. I mean, that was a reckoning. That was a reckoning. And yet there was that inner warrior in me that was just like, okay, It's all right. Like, you can do this. I just gave you a lot of information there.
Can I just have a moment to actually get my jaw back up? Bloody hell, girl. This is brutal. But then again, this is life. This is betrayal. This is trauma. This is pain, suffering. It is depression there, the anxiety that you beautifully described. Mm-hmm. But you're an overachiever. 34 seizures. Come on. Honestly.
Like, come on.
Rookie numbers. Honestly. No, kidding. I want to come across the telephone line, give you a huge hug for crying out loud. These are hard times. How did you get through that? I mean, you found the inner warrior, but was there also a part of you that was so hurt that you wanted to forget? Did alcohol become tempting to you? Did maybe sleeping tablets or painkillers, did they started to play a role in your life?
No, alcohol I can talk about, like, was sort of a role in my life up until several years ago. It's sort of this background. I was using alcohol to get through social, like in college, like I would socially drink because I thought I wasn't good enough. And I had such insecurity. So it's like, oh my gosh, I need to go to this party, instead of realizing that I'm an introvert at nature. I don't like going, and once I came back to me and what do I like? And I didn't have to buffer and use alcohol to get through this. And so then I was able to see more, like, what is alcohol giving me? Well, alcohol is giving me restless sleep. It's giving me, I'm way more pissy and argumentative with my now amazing husband. It is giving me, it's just giving me a lot of stuff that I actually don't want. So my drama in my head when I'm thinking, oh, this beer will taste really nice, is actually complete nonsense. So alcohol for me was sort of I almost call it like my introvert, like Band-Aid, until I was like able to claim, like, no, I am who I am. It's okay. Like, it's fine. And then look at alcohol more really my thoughts around alcohol and recognizing, calling them out for the BS that they were, that it doesn't make it more fun, that it doesn't make me more fun. It doesn't, any of that. In terms of the dark moments of when I was in that unfinished basement, I do credit that inner warrior. And I also, there is a mother bear in me that I was, part of what was causing the conflict between me and my then husband was how these kids were being parented. I was able to say, he had a lot of rules for me. And so I was able to say, okay, he doesn't want me to wear a button down shirt, or he doesn't want me to wear, eyeshadow, or he doesn't, like, taking his rules, and okay, he knows best because Susie doesn't know. But when he started to put that on my kids and it was going against my training, I actually taught school at some point in my little history there, and I had a master's of education. And there was a fierceness in me that was like, oh, hell no, I'm sorry. And so while I wasn't able to do it for myself, my kids motivated me initially so that I did keep getting up every day. I'm not saying there weren't days when I was crying and shaking, and, I was on some anxiety medicine at the time, which I'm really grateful for. And yet it was those kids, and just believing something different was possible, that this wasn't right, that this is not like this marriage, seeing my friend die and, seeing my parents' marriage and seeing the marriage I was in, and then starting to think, is this the marriage I want for my boys? Is this what I'm modeling? Like, do I want my boys to treat their wife like this? Do I want this sort of gendered nonsense passed down? And I didn't really know what I wanted, but I knew it wasn't this. And that was enough to sort of take that leap.
When you felt that warrior rising within you, can you remember how it felt? Did it actually give you?
I'd say kind of miserable. It's both and. I think that was a very dark period of my life. When I think of my worst fears coming true, I lost all my money, my whole, not just my parents, but my two sisters. And then my dad was a wealthy man, and he uses money to sort of control people. So all of my relatives went silent. Susie's the crazy one. Susie's my ex-husband, crazy. He which I can understand, because he's married to this, he's upset and he's sad. And that's sometimes what happens in divorce. But my in-laws, tell me I'm going to rot in hell. Like, everywhere I looked. So I have no money. I've been a stay-at-home mom for 19 years. My family's gone. And yet I gotta, it's that like inner guide. Yeah.
I lived this warrior state for a long time. And I finally, after rehab, once I stopped actually trying to numb my pain and trying to escape my reality, once I started dealing with things, I actually went into that beautiful life that I live now. Having said that, last year, something occurred that brought the warrior back out. And it was the most amazing feeling. It was like a schizophrenic body shift from one moment to the other. I felt the warrior rising, and a coldness came over me, but also a crystal clear vision. It was spooky. There was no more emotion in me. If I, at that moment, would have to take the life of a man to protect my family, I would have happily done so. That was the coldness. And it lasted for about a week. The warrior needed to be there to help me to get through that time. And he was there, but he scared the living daylights out of me, because I saw him without the alcohol. I saw him without the negativity, without I couldn't hide. And I was like an out-of-body experience observing this guy coming up. He is a scary dude. I love him to bits, because one day he might very well rescue my life. And you need to be a warrior You need to be there. But as you say, they come out at various times in our lives, and these times are not good. So, and maybe the warrior is not very so nice.
Well, I was going to say, so to answer your question, how I feel when I'm like, my warrior power is a very strong, grounded, calm, like I'm acting in my highest self. When I was still in that basement, I wasn't there yet. I was very unsure. I was very scared. I was very like, oh my gosh, am I doing the right thing? All my training has told me Susie doesn't know what's right. Now Susie's launching this, Susie's jumping off a cliff without a parachute. And how do we know? But it was each time just taking the next right step, the next right step, the next right step. And around that time, I figured out, I discovered my coach, who is a cognitive-based causal coach. She works, and introduced me to the fact that our thoughts create our feelings, not our circumstances creating our feelings. And that, in addition to mindfulness and meditation, is really what then saw me through, and is why I do what I do now, so that I can help women sort of feel the hard feelings, I'm not shove them down with alcohol, not shove them down with, I was an over exerciser. I was a restrictive eater, I was trying to use all the tools so I didn't have to feel my feelings. So I help people feel their feeling while also taking responsibility for their life, like the thoughts that they're thinking are creating their feelings. And
that's beautiful. So that is what you describe as the warrior, and that's beautiful to say. Obviously, in my mind, the warrior has a different role. Yours
it's going to be different
for me.
everyone.
No, absolutely. No, it's interesting because essentially I do exactly the same thing. Or I have done the same thing. Nowadays, I say it. I want to dream who I am, and who I want to be. And then I want to change the dream into a very clear vision. So I want to go very in minute details. Who is this person that I want to become? And then from that dream becomes the vision. And then the vision, by taking action, by taking tiny little steps into that direction, it becomes a mission. And that is what this path is, what you describe. You describe the path of taking action, knowing that you're in a place that you don't want to be, that you need to taste the desperation, you need to taste the depression. Don't numb it, but actually feel it and say, okay, enough of that. And
feel it to motivate you forward.
Absolutely.
And then also, there's a lot of that. I didn't know, like in terms of my vision then, I didn't know really what it would look like. I didn't have any, relationships I was going to. I just knew not this. And then I needed to take that next step. It's like in the action and not going back to how, everything that was modeled to me. But that nowadays I do, I as exactly as you're saying, I try to close my eyes and visualize what I'm going to be like, that next best self. And what would that woman be doing? And then taking action, still scary.
Absolutely.
Towards that. Scary doesn't go away.
Should you?
Just expect it. Right.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. And obviously the self-doubt will never go away. I mean, your story changed in what about 10, 15 years ago? Was that sort of the time frame? So you've been on this path of self-improvement and of working on your self-love, on your self-appreciation for 10, 15 years. Do you still from now and then get these voices coming up? Do you still from now and then hear you're not good enough? You're coming onto this show. How the hell, who are you to say something on this show? Do you get this imposter syndrome?
I mean, and I'm much better at being sort of this kind watcher of myself and understanding, first of all, any messages I got from my parents at a young age were deeply embedded into my neural pathways. So that's the work that I do. And I understand the human brain, and I'm much better at saying, oh, okay, nice that you're thinking that, and we're not going to listen. I just did a podcast on sort of the three critics that come in and steal your dreams. And one is that, the openly critical person who's like, you can't do that. Like, we know them, and it's like, just go away. The second one is that well-meaning one, like, oh, I'm only telling you this because I love you. I mean, that was like my parents. It's like, no, not helpful. But the third is our brain, and it's inside our own head. And I'm not sure that's ever going to go away. I think I get better at spotting it and shortening the time that I listen to it. But it's like each new level, it just speaks up. Like one for me, because of the messaging from my dad is, you know, women aren't as good as men. Women aren't good business women. Women don't. And so it comes up. It doesn't come up for me as much in personal relationships anymore, but it'll come up in business where, you know, maybe I'm looking to hire someone and then I get this love with, you can't do that. Women aren't good at business. And I'm like, thank you, brain. I'm better at recognizing. But I do think, you know, I expect that voice to be there really for my whole life. Just I'm hoping to recognize it sooner, and that voice is just doing what our primal brains are meant to do. They're meant to keep us safe, stay here. You know, they're not meant, like our brain is not set up to make us happy. It is here to keep us alive. Correct. It doesn't matter it doesn't care if we're miserable and alive. And so how it knows to do that is it just keeps repeating the same. It's like, let's repeat what we've done, conserve energy, you know, do what you did yesterday. That's all good. Even if that means you were crying and drinking beer, you know. Correct. This is when we push to a new level, our brain is going to throw up all this chatter. I call them turd thoughts, like just sort of like, and I'm just like, just if someone handed you a turd, you wouldn't be like, oh, thank you. Okay. Yeah. No, you'd be like, throw that thing away.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
I'm not listening.
I like it. Oh, I like it. I like it a lot. And you're so right, isn't it? But it is, and I love it. I love it. Here you are. I mean, strictly spoken, you're a bit ahead of me on your path just by time, because there you are, already have worked on you for the 10, 15 years. I basically am coming up to 10 years of hard slog. And I love it that you say, no, this is an ongoing journey. This is an ongoing.
I don't think, I think setting the expectation that we're going to reach this point where we're all like rainbows and daisies. This is great. You know, then I would have to ask if you're pushing yourself enough. Yeah. Like, are you, you know, we're either growing or shrinking. So if you're just, you know, oh, this is, you know, and if you're not, if you're just like, no, I'm good. No fear here. It's like, well, maybe you're a little complacent. Like that's what we're here to do is my belief.
Oh, I like it. I like it. I like it. I phrase it mildly different. I say either you work on your recovery or you work on your relapse. And that is in the phrasing of addiction. The same, however, is also recovery and mental illness when it comes to depression, anxiety. There's so many things that we can do and that we must do in order to keep ourselves sane, happy, and growing, as you say, expanding and becoming that new improved version of yourself. And the moment you get too focused on the hamster wheel and you're just running and don't do the self-love and the self-care, you are so doomed. And it is just, and it doesn't take long, isn't it? It doesn't take long to sort of
I know.
lose you.
Right. Can get frustrating. But it's also, again, this is where our like power and it comes from our thoughts. I have anxiety and I am just sort of aware that it's there. And I'm not like, God, why is this here? You know, I'm not fighting it. There's a lot to be said with acceptance. And so it's just this like, okay, with anxiety, I know, you know, beer's not great for me or, you know, alcohol isn't good for me. I also know that one of the best things I can do for anxiety is get up and start moving right away. Another thing I can do is to focus on and it's not like bringing in this victim mindset. Like the more I think I have anxiety, then the more anxious I feel. And it's more like, okay, like I'll sort of say like anxiety is present today. You know, like I might say that to my husband, who I'm now married to the most wonderful man, but I'll say like anxiety is present today, just as like, you know, fatigue is present, you know, and the more I focus on it, the more, and so then instead of being like, oh my God, I'm tired. And then I'm feeling tired or I'm nervous, I'm anxious. It's more this anxiety is present. And then my next, you know, I get to choose the thought I want to think about that. Wow, I'm going to take extra good care of myself today. Or I'm going to make sure that I eat protein because I need to feed my brain. I know when I'm not feeding my brain goes to anxiety. And it's the thoughts about it, but then I feel more in control, which then luckily helps anxiety. Self-fulfilling prophecy.
My book, My Steps to Sobriety. And in there, I've got the chapter exactly on anxiety and on the influence of alcohol on it. And I call it hangxiety on the next day, because you were anxious and you're drinking and now everything is all right. Now the next morning, guess what? The anxiety is still there. And now you've got a hangover. So hangover, hangxiety. anxiety, and it is just
Oh,
brutal.
that's so good. Yeah.
Oh, I lived that life. I know it so well.
Yeah.
And like you, I've got anxiety because it is just, it is just probably a degree of PTSD that still lurks around from previous trauma. Plus, there is, I think I'm a bit of an anxious person in its own right at times. So there are days when I maybe not look so well after myself. And I loved what you said about the eating. When I'm hungry, angry, lonely, tired, the hold works for me all the time. Give me 3 of them and I don't feel well. Give me 4 of them. Well, in the past, I would have seen the condensation running down the Chardonnay glass, and I could taste the Chardonnay on my lips, that kind of thing. Nowadays, the hungry angry. So let's rephrase that. Nowadays, I still get anxiety, but I now recognize it as a messenger of me not having paid attention to my own needs. So therefore,
I like to sort of accept it. Like, okay, I have anxiety. I am a woman, or I have ears, or I have, like, to not make drama around it, or to not make it mean something about me. Like I didn't do something right, or I haven't processed my trauma enough. It's like, right, I have anxiety. So what am I going to do to care about myself? Like, I'm a woman. What do I do to care for myself? I make sure that I get sleep. I make sure that I get, and it's these things, it's like we do the best we can on most days. With that forgiveness of like, I am who I am.
Oh, Susie, that's perfect. That's what a beautiful thing. But, this would have not been your regular thought pattern in the unfinished basement. Then you're truly in survival. Then you're not even realizing what's going on. But you needed that starting point, that low in your life, to now actually start crawling back and strengthening yourself one little tiny bit at a time. And that is what got you there now. Listen to you now. It's beautiful. And I feel the strength coming through the bloody, the energy comes through my screen here. It's gorgeous. But that is so different from the person that you have been. But that is the beautiful thing. That is the growth. That's
what happens in life. Yeah.
That's right. That is when you let it. And you get a privilege. You've got you get the privilege to change. You just need to actually take the steps. And one of the steps is to admit that enough is enough. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. I think that would be a really good thing to actually start with. Oh my.
Well, and I hear from a lot of people, that sounds so hard. That sounds so hard. That sounds so hard. And yet, sort of the paradox of life is that we, instead of doing the hard, like, okay, I have the urge right now for wine, and it sounds hard to not have the wine, to resist the urge, to wait until tomorrow. But when we, so then we do the easy, which actually, so we have the wine, but that makes our life harder. And yet in doing the hard, and right then, choosing, what, I'm going to do my breathing exercise. I'm going to go journal. I'm going to, listen to one of your shows, or I'm not going to have the wine. I'm going to do the hard. It makes our life easier. And it is this paradox of like doing the hard work. Like I could still be in that marriage. I could have just shut it down. I could still have all my money. I could still have, my life would have been crazy. I don't know what would have happened physically to me. My boys would have been in a completely different place. I can't, and yet, like at the time, that would have seemed easier to many. Like, just don't rock the boat, Susie. Like, let's just, come on. It's a good enough marriage. You have a good enough life. Who are you to ask for more? Are a lot of the things I heard. And it would have been easy to just sort of bow down and numb it with alcohol until I do not know where I would be at this point, but I'm thankful that I'm not.
And that's absolutely. And that is the problem, because so many women fall into that trap where then the mummy wine culture is coming in, and it's insidious because it is numbing. That is what it does, and it is often there for many, many years. When I went into rehab, I was at the time end of 40s. There was a lady who was there, 65. And she had basically just left her husband. And it was, there you are, you're talking 40 years in a marriage. I mean, did she, was that really necessary? Did she really have to grow herself towards 2, 3, 4 bottles of wine a day before enough was enough? And that is I'm so pleased for you that you ended up.
And I'm always like, yes, she did. I always say you can't argue with the past. It happened exactly how it was meant to happen.
Yep. Okay.
So it's like, apparently she needed 4, and it's like, thank God that she didn't spend 50 years there or 60. I say any day. I like to make decisions. Yeah. It's like any days in it. Would you choose this man again? Okay, then no, let's do something else.
Love it.
Let's not stay stuck in these patterns just because.
I absolutely love that, because that's my core mantra. The past does not equal the future. That is my core inner belief. That is what drives me. Whatever has happened in the past happened there. It happened for a reason. Sometimes, oftentimes, I'm not very proud of what happened in the past. Then again, right now, it gives me the insight, the power, the privilege to transform again, to change again.
Yeah.
Okay. So
and that view, what that does is it removes the shame. And we know from addiction that shame loves secrecy, and this like beating ourselves up for what we've done it doesn't serve anybody. It's more this like, I can have regret for what I've done. And yet to feel guilt or shame for what I did is not helpful. It doesn't move me forward to say like, if I were to do that differently, I'd do it differently. Unfortunately, I'm not 22 anymore. So here we go. How am I going to how do I want to show up today? Correct. And how do I want to show up tomorrow? Correct. And how do I want to show up next year? And that's what we have control over. That sort of future play. So I love it.
And I want to extend that equally. You were focusing on the addiction with that, about the shame. There are just as many people who are angry about their anxiety, who are angry about that they go through a dark period, that they have got a bout of depression and get really angry and shameful and guilty about it. And the evil twins of shame and guilt.
Hugs. I'm that's like, right. You're human.
It's okay not to be okay. It's okay not to be okay. Say that again. So that's it. And it's we still live in a society where that is not normal. There are still taboos left, right, and center about these kind of things. You're not allowed to be anything else than picture perfect. And it bloody pisses me off. It is, we're getting a little bit signs here and there that things are changing. There are employer assistance programs around.
Well, people like your show and your book, like the more people that speak up, you can't do that if you're stuck in shame. And so the more people that are speaking up and that are speaking out, and I speak of a midlife awakening. It's not a midlife crisis. And I speak of how divorce has been so magical for my family instead of this shame of divorce. And I ruined a family. I'm like, I'm not buying into that bullshit. Like my family is so much better, including my ex-husband, who now is in a new relationship. Like at the time, sure, drama. Now it's like, look at all of us. Our lives are better. So,
it's beautiful.
Not buying into this drama and getting into what it takes today to move forward to tomorrow in a kind and compassionate place.
Especially to yourself, the kind and compassionate.
Yes, that's when people are feeling shame or guilt. I know when I was alone, I would give myself hugs myself and just like, oh, it's okay, Susie. Just sort of those like words of nurturing to ourselves of like, what do we want? What would we like to hear from someone else, of that forgiveness and that, kindness?
You're a better woman than I was a man, because I was beating myself up for a long time.
Oh, I beat myself up too. Yeah, don't get me wrong. It's we do it all. We're human. It's like, beating that's I think in our nature that we're just like you. But that's that voice in our head. Yeah. Or when we can catch it and be like, why are you talking so mean to me?
True. But that is something that I've got still, even after 8-10 years on my new journey, I still have got, I think, the training wheels on my bike.
It takes training. It takes practice. I actually run a membership. I call it my Midlife Warriors. Yeah. And we have a membership. And right now for the month of February, because Valentine's Day is a big deal in America, and that's when we're recording. That's what we do, a whole month of loving on ourselves, and I'm trying to get it so they're reprogramming their brain, and praise, we're more comfortable with praise than negativity. So
Beautiful.
every day writing down something that they appreciate about their body, something that they appreciate about themselves, their strengths, and because this is the kind of language that, you know, maybe we weren't given, or and why not start some new neural pathways that way? That is what I have found. I also found a couple of years ago, I just drew a line in the sand with myself in terms of negative, you know, I don't know what kind of negative talk you have coming up, but I had a lot of negative body talk because my dad was always telling me, you know, women needed certain kind of bodies. And I just was like, stop it. I'm not buying into that anymore. Like, okay, maybe, you know, under my arm is flabby. Well, that's what my arm looks like. And I love my friggin' arm, or like wrinkles or I just was like, I'm not having that negative voice in my head anymore. And so when I hear her, I'm just like, I didn't ask for your opinion. Thank you.
Yeah.
And that takes some, just that line in the sand, but it's also, you know, I'm sort of like, oh, hell no. That's where my warrior shows up. She's like, none of that here. We're speaking positively. And I
like that. I like that. And that's the core beliefs. And that's where you have grown strong in your ability to recognize it and deal with it. I have not yet got the strength there, but I've got people around me, life coaches and other people who are actually saying, Stefan, no, don't say it that way. The don't. You should never say the don't, because little kids, for example, do not do that. Don't do that. They don't hear the don't. They hear what they, you know. So rephrase it. Rephrase things in a positive way.
This is also where it helps me realize there's no point where we won't have that voice. That's the way our brain is designed. And so it's not this like perfectionist thought that like, I'm never going to be critical of myself again. It's more this acceptance, like, oh, there she is, and I'm not listening to you. Thank you. Goodbye. You know, like, thank you. And no, I'm not like behind that. I still have this voice coming out. There's not something wrong with me. It's just like, I'm in a human brain. My brain is doing what it's meant to be. I'm a Homo sapien sapien. I get to think about what I think about. So I get to choose. Do I want to think that turd thought, or do I want to swipe? I don't. So goodbye.
Love it.
That's where my power lies.
Love it. And that's a superpower. You actually see everyone out there listening and watching. See, here you go. You don't need to be bitten by a spider, or you don't need to be bathing in a vat of some radioactive material to become a superwoman. No, here, Susie, superwoman, has just gained an ability that is foreign to, I would say, 95, 97% of the population.
It was foreign to me until midlife, when I was like, oh, the things that my brain is telling me are just like, they're optional. They're thoughts. They're sentences in my head. I get to choose whether I attach to them or not. And that's the sort of cognitive coaching that I'm doing. And I actually have to go. I think we have a time constraint. Yeah. So I'm sorry about that.
I do apologize.
Wonderful
then
conversation.
Stop. What we'll do is we'll wrap it up in a quick way. Do you have 3 minutes?
Yes.
Good. Okay. Right. So 5 seconds that we know where cut. Susie, you're an amazing woman. If what you have told us, if that gels with other people, tell me, where can they find you?
Oh, I would love to have you all head over to my Love Your Life Show podcast. It is where I put every single week, I pour my heart out to you with tools to help you live a life that you love. It is free, because when I was in the basement, I did not have the money to spend out there. And it is a wonderful stepping stone for people there. If they're ready to dive in, they can join my membership if they identify as a woman and they're over 40. That's at smbwell.com/membership. And my podcast is wherever podcasts can be found, the Love Your Life Show, or just, I'm hoping that if you search Susie Pettit, Pettit, it'll come up. But I just send so much love out to your listeners, anyone who's on the sobriety journey, anyone who's on this journey of life, trying to be their best self and to stand in their strength of their warrior. You're not alone. We've got you. You're not behind. You're exactly where you're meant to be. And I send big love to everyone.
Brilliant, guys. And look down there into the description of the show. It is all there. And whilst you're there, press the like and the subscribe button and tell your friends about all these amazing people who are on my show. Susie is one of them. Susie, you're gorgeous. Thank you for your strength. Thank you for making this world a little bit of a better place with your show, with each intervention. And look after yourself. And you guys out there, stay strong. I believe in you. Bye.
Let's go. Thank you. Bye.
Done. Oh, fuck.